Hello. So today I want to cover one of the most important topics in the gaming industry and esports, and that surrounds the competitive inclusion of women within esports and the industry itself. And I want to cover this topic hopefully in its entirety, with my goal being to outline this entire argument, provide resources, and give people a central reference point to deal with this issue when it inevitably comes up a million times later. So, this is a really important issue. It's something that I've thought about a lot in the esports industry and something that I've done a lot about. So when I saw this topic come back around, I instantaneously wanted to make a topic about it. And I think if you are interested in the gaming industry at all, you really want to watch this video. So this whole topic and discussion started when ESL launched a Counter-Strike Global Offensive Women's League. They announced that it would have a $500,000 prize pool, and this was mostly met with positivity, though one particular person, a esports commentator by the name of Thorin, came under fire. And I'm going to be honest with you, I was looking through his tweets to try to find a reference. I think he's generally against the idea of the league. I found one, which was if you don't need men and you're so great, then prove it. Start an all-female company that is funded by all-female investors. Run an all-female league on an all-female run stream platform, cater to female fans, and let me know how you do. But I just, to be honest, I didn't go through all of his tweets. This dude tweets like 5 million times per day, and it doesn't matter what he said and what he did or whatever. This video is much more important than to address it against a single commentator. The fact of the matter is that there are many people who believe that women are either worse in esports or simply are just worse than men at competitive games, or don't belong in esports or gaming for whatever matter, and just are worse in general. And we're going to address that today. So there are several different sections that I want to cover, and by the end of this, you're going to have hopefully a full picture, or I'm going to do the best that I can. And the first place we need to start is, okay, are women worse than men at video games? And that's a great question, because we have, to the date of this recording, never really seen like a true competitive representation of a woman in, say, like the North American LCS, or that would compete with a man. So that logic would follow. You would think, okay, well, why then? Like, obviously, since we haven't seen women in esports, it must lead to the fact that the women are worse than men at gaming, right? Well, let's take a look at what we know. So there are actually a few studies that have been done on women and men in gaming, and I'd like to bring those up. The first one here is a study that was done across massive multiplayer online games, actually a very large study. And I'm going to save you going through the entire study. I'll include the links to these studies and everything down below. But in short, the results and conclusions are they took a couple of massive multiplayer online games, and then they came to a couple conclusions. And that conclusion is that when controlling for extraneous factors such as playtime and guild membership, our results showed that women perform at least as well as men do. Perceived gender-based performance disparities seem to result from factors that are confounded from gender, i.e. amount of play, not player gender itself. The stereotype of female players as inferior is not only false, but it is also a potential cause for unequal participation in digital gaming. So pay attention to that right there. Unequal participation in digital game. We're going to see that later, okay? So in EverQuest 2, which was one of the games that was analyzed, these models show that women in our EQ2 sample advanced in the game at least as fast as men, and in some cases exceeded them. But what you'll find across these studies is that oftentimes women don't have the same play time as men, and that is one of the reasons why they seem to perform less, but when equalized for that, they perform fine. Another study here saying women perform as well as men in spatial action video games when accounting for previous gameplay experience. Again, this study finds that we found that if you do not control for the amount of time that they have played or other aspects of game behavior, such as guild membership, it looks like men level up faster than women. But when you do control for such factors, there's no statistical difference between men and women. Any statistical difference goes away. This suggests that the perception that women are not as good at video games as men is simply driven by facts other than gender, such as the fact that they tend not to play as much as men. And this, again, is something we saw in streaming, in live stream, when I made a video about the truth about women on Twitch, a super important video. And I found that the perception that women do better in streaming is completely false. And moreover, women stream on average about 40% less than men, but when accounting for that difference in hours, they do just about as well, if not worse, than men in streaming. And there's a bunch of reasons for that you can watch in this video. So as far as we know from a lot of I've dug into this and spent a bunch of hours researching this stuff. And as far as we know, there is nothing. There's quite a bit of evidence that says that women perform as well as men in video games. And but we need to be fair, right? Let's go look at the studies that show that they're worse in video games. Oh, there aren't any. There's literally none. I couldn't find a single one. I looked everywhere, and I couldn't find any studies that showed that women are worse in video games anywhere. So if you can find one, you can leave one in the comments section. Maybe it exists. I couldn't find it. So then, if you're going to accept my premise, which is that men and women functionally don't have any difference in their gameplay, you're going to say, well, Devin, why is it the case then that there isn't any women in esports, right? As of the time of this recording, right? There are no women that are competing with men in esports at the level like at League of Legends or CS:GO, etc. So what reasons could that be? And now we're going to get into the real meat of the video and like why I think this is actually so important. Like why have we never seen a top female competitor in one of these games? Okay, well, I'm going to set up the argument and I'm going to show you here that essentially, the very first reason and a very significant reason for this is that we need to bust out the notepad here. That's right. It is that time in the video to wield the secret weapon. Number one, we, the gaming industry, right, parentheses, are creating a hostile environment for women. So there are numerous dozens and dozens and dozens of famous women streamers who have talked about this issue. Famously, Ammunition, who showed exactly what kind of harassment she gets as a gamer, did an unbelievable tweet where she showed this series of clips that she was just playing games, like sitting there, and the commentary that she got in those games. And if you'd recall from 2020, there was a massive movement about sexism and harassment where over 70 women gave me this, subscribe to this thing or you can't read it, from over 70 women spoke about gaming harassment and sexism, as well as several Twitch streamers saying that being a female gamer means facing violent abuse. These women have had enough. When quoted as saying, I hate that it feels like, as a woman, my worth as a content creator is measured by how attractive I am to a particular person rather than any of the cool things that I just do or create. And I have had numerous talks about this. You can go back to my talks with Amaranth about this. You can go back to my talks with Pokimane about this that are all on this channel, and you will see the widespread talk of very successful women in the industry saying, man, it is tough to be a girl in this industry. And I'm going to move away from my kind of studies and references to other people and just tell you, I've been in esports for almost a decade now. I ran 2 major esports teams, and I can tell you that the harassment and the difficulty for women to be in gaming in general and esports especially is unbelievably hard, right? To the point where they're not welcome in gaming houses because they are seen as disrupting competitive integrity. They're not, there's an automatic like judgment that gets made that a woman is going to be worse than a man at gaming. And this is like such a widespread thing that George, the founder of CLG, and I actually started CLG Red, which was an all-females team for CS:GO. I shouldn't really say that we started it. It was really Steph that brought the team to us, and then we incorporated it into CLG. She really started it, and she's a pretty amazing person. And but we fostered it, got it sponsored, and it's still a part of CLG today. It's a competitive CS:GO team. I can tell you I've had a lot of experience talking directly with women who have experienced this level of harassment, and it makes it very difficult to join the gaming industry. This is something we're going to talk about more. Because I'm just setting up this argument because the next section that I want to go into is like, well, okay, if only there was like a historical thing, since we don't have like, let's just like go with the haters and all the people, and they say, okay, well, there hasn't been female competitive gamers, and you know, there's no evidence that shows that like women are ever going to be competitive at any level. Okay, cool. Well, if only there was a field of some kind of historical reference point where women were once believed to be worse than men, and then history proved it different. If only we had a field like that. Oh, wait, we do. It's the STEM industry, right? Science and mathematics, where this actually happened before. This was the exact same thing. So in a Harvard paper, the first women that came into Harvard were came in around the 1900s, and at the time, it was widely believed that women were just worse than men at everything. And read this. As to the question of opening faculty positions to women, Harvard president, this is the president of Harvard, right? One of the most prestigious schools in the United States, reportedly said, where are we going here? Okay. Reportedly said that the mental capacities of the female sex were lesser, right? So it used to be believed that and in 1970 there were no tenured women in the Faculty of Arts and Sciences. Women held 7% of tenured positions in 1988, and as of 2005 made up only 13% of those positions. So this is still a problem now, but we can see that there was a huge bias towards women in the STEM fields, and there still is. Okay, and if we just look across the STEM, we see that there are tons of barriers. I love this whole group of studies. So in several studies, children were asked to draw a mathematician or scientist. Girls were twice as likely to draw men as they were to draw women, whereas men almost universally drew other men. However, and in one striking study from 2015, Israeli researchers divided 6th grade exams into 2 sets of grading. One batch was graded by teachers and included students' names. The other contained no student names and was graded externally. In math, teachers graded boys higher, while external grades rated girls higher. Graders rated girls higher. Lower teacher grades dissuaded girls for years to come in mathematics. Another study found that female high school students viewed chemistry textbooks containing pictures of female scientists. They perform better than female students who viewed textbooks containing only pictures of males. So within STEM, there is a massive stereotype that women perform worse. And it was widely believed at the time when the Harvard papers were done that women were worse in STEM than men were. But we now know that not to be true, right? So when you look at the actual research, you find that women oftentimes actually perform better in math when tested without men. And when women are told they're going to do badly by men, they do worse. Okay? But if you actually look at the data, women can score consistently equal in math and sciences on par with men. So in science, girls perform on par with boys and enroll in advanced science and math courses at equal rates as they move into high school. A gender gap in participation starts to appear as girls take fewer or more advanced STEM courses and tests as they get closer to college. And then, right, the more women that participate in STEM, the more women get interested in STEM, and the better that they do as a group. So what does this mean going back to esports? It means a couple of things and a couple of conclusions, right? It's exactly the same thing. Right now in esports, there is a belief that women perform worse than men in gaming. But this belief is unfounded. There is no evidence that women perform worse, and some compelling evidence that they do equal or better. Okay? And furthermore, the belief that women in esports are worse than men is totally unfounded. It's all based on the belief that there hasn't been women in esports before. Okay? But that was exactly the same argument that everybody used in STEM. They said, well, there's no women in arts and sciences. There's no women that do mathematics. There's no famous women that do mathematics. There's no good women that do mathematics. Do you realize that's the exact same argument that reportedly extremely intelligent people at Harvard and Yale and Brown were saying about women? And now there are tons of famous women in mathematics, tons of famous women in STEM, and we know that the social structure, the cultural structure of how we encourage women to be a part of things and how they feel encouraged is directly the result of if women is directly relevant to if women are going to perform better or not. Okay? And esports is exactly the same thing. There is absolutely no support group for a woman in esports or in live streaming right now, really, if you want to be a woman in these fields. It is so hard, okay? Like, and there's going to be, and that's like what I want to talk about now. It's like, there's going to be people that are like, oh, like, well, how hard could it be? We would have seen one breakthrough, right? We would have seen one go past all that and and succeed, right? And I want to tell you a story about Roger Bannister. Okay, Roger Bannister was the first person to run a was it a 4 minute mile? Yeah, he ran the first 4 minute mile. Okay, and nobody else had ever done it in history. And I mean, going all the way back to recorded history, nobody had ever run a 4 minute mile. But what happened just a few years after Roger Bannister ran the 4 minute mile? Dozens of people broke the 4 minute record. Dozens, but no one in history had ever done it before. Why? Because somebody showed it was possible. So the reinforcement of social groups and cultural groups is so important, and there are many, many factors that are working against women in gaming and esports. It's not just the fact that nobody's ever really done it before, and so somebody has to break that mold. It's that women have to deal with huge amounts of harassment, verbal abuse, and expectations that are unreasonable just for them to get past the starting line, okay? The very fact that you are sitting here and listening to this from me, a white dude in esports, is indicative of the problem, okay? If I was a hot chick sitting right here telling you the same thing, citing the same studies, you would implicitly judge my content before you even heard what I had to say. That's how deep-rooted the cultural bias is. There are people like Amaranth in my industry who are just as smart as me, but nobody takes them seriously because they look at Amaranth and they see, oh, it's just a hot chick, and then there's that implicit cultural bias. And the problem with people that are criticizing this issue of women in esports and saying that women are not good enough is they are ignoring how difficult it is for a woman to be in esports and how difficult it is for a woman to even succeed. You can, again, go back to my videos with Amaranth or Pokimane, the two most successful content creators of all time on Twitch, and just the amount of trouble they get in as a result of just being a woman. I mean, before anything else that comes from being a streamer, because if you're a streamer, it's a hard job in general, and you're going to get a lot of hate. I get a lot of hate, and I'm a white dude, right? But I mean, like, it's nothing compared to this, but it's a different type of targeted hate. If you hate this video, you'll hate it because you think I'm wrong. You'll hate it because you think that I'm presenting bad points, or I'm wrong in some way, or because I'm like a douche or whatever. That's what you'll hate. You won't hate me for how I look. You, most of you. I mean, somebody's gonna be like, "Hey, this headset's weird." I don't know, right? It won't be. I won't seriously have any kind of judgment from this video. You'll attack me on my points, okay? Because everything else in your head is in order with how I present myself. But with a woman, right? And by the way, when I say you, I'm not referring to you, the viewer, right now. Obviously, you, the viewer, probably the vast majority of you support this video, and thank you for doing that. And I hope that you use this video to talk to people about this problem. So I'm just saying you in the general sense of people that are on the other side of this problem. So there is this there's this sort of immediate judging the book by its color, by its cover, where and its color, where the points that I make are valued and judged on the virtue of those points. You see, I need to do no work on my appearance or my qualifications. I sound and I speak like a person that knows what they're talking about. And 60% of the people that watch this video will be unsubscribed, but will still think that I have serious qualifications. You may not even know that I was the CEO of an esports team. Might not even matter, because what I'm saying sounds convincing enough, and I look the part, right? What a lot of people that are on the other side of this issue are underestimating is that as a woman, to get to the starting line of making a video like this, or making a stream, or joining the esports industry, or being a competitive gamer, you have to overcome every single person that tells you to get back in the kitchen as soon as you join an Overwatch lobby, or tells you that you cannot be a streamer, or if you are successful as a broadcaster, it's just because of your attractiveness and your boob size. And I cannot echo to you how difficult that is to deal with over and over and over again. Because if you want to attack me on my points, I'll do it all day. That's fine, right? We can go back and forth on that. I don't really feel personally offended, but if I was getting personally character attacked every single day as a result of my nose being too big, or my lips, or whatever the hell it is that women deal with every single day, it would be exhausting, and you would get out of the industry eventually, because you'd just be so exhausted by, like, man, I have tried so hard. I've worked at least as hard as every other guy, but they don't have to put up with these issues. And the problem is that unless you are in the shoes of these of these women, or you're very empathetic, it's extremely difficult to relate to because you've never had that difficulty, right? Like for me, I've never had that difficulty. I was never judged in that way. I was only judged on my qualifications and my virtue of the things that I said, and that was it. Like I never had to deal with that. I only learned this because I had really deep conversations with a lot of women. I personally tried to build an all-women's esports team and see the difficulty of it, so I can speak to you from that lens. I'm lucky enough to be that, but the very fact that I have to be one of the arbiters of this, and it's not a woman in front of you telling you these problems, it sucks. It sucks because it is indicative of the issue. Okay, like if there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, it's how difficult it is for women to do anything before they even get to the starting line, much less if they much less succeed at the level that we're talking about to pass through all that. And it is my belief that if women get the correct role models and get the correct level of support, and we start fixing this cultural problem of harassment, verbal abuse, and difficulty, and we make that barrier easier, you'll have no problem seeing women get to the highest levels in esports. So this is reinforced, by the way, by this is a really cool study here where it talks about the biases that in STEM. Again, like I just think this is such a great analogy. So in STEM, 2/3 of women interviewed and 2/3 of women surveyed reported to have proved themselves over and over again. Their success discounted, their expertise questioned. People just assume you're not going to be able to cut it, a statistician told us. Black women were considerably more likely than other women to report to having to deal with this type of bias. 3/4 of black women did, right? So that means 3/4 of black women who were in STEM reported this problem. That's a lot of women, right? Number 2, women need to behave in masculine ways in order to be seen competent, right? Women are expected to be feminine. So women find themselves walking a tightrope between seeing too feminine to be competent and too masculine to be likable. More than a third, 34% of scientists surveyed reported feeling pressure to play a traditionally feminine role. Number 3, women hit a wall when they're trying to get, when they look at pregnancy. There's a whole nother issue there. Studies show that women who have encountered discrimination early in their careers often distance themselves from other women. And we've shown that that's actually bad, right? Isolation. So 42% of black women agree that I feel that socially engaging with my colleagues may negatively affect perception of my competence. These are serious issues within STEM that are being addressed right now. And nobody would deny that these issues, nobody in their right mind right now would deny that these issues are affecting STEM. And yet a lot of people are in the same vein not acknowledging these problems in esports, which are even more pronounced because gaming started and still is a widely male-dominated industry. And it's widely a male-dominated industry of young males who don't acknowledge problems like this. So all these problems of exclusion, all these problems of tightroping, all these problems of social groups with women apply to esports and gaming and more, along with the literal 1800 year 1800 viewpoints that women are worse than men at these things. So, like, if you start stacking all these things on top of each other, you hopefully it starts painting the picture of like, oh my God, the likelihood of a woman becoming a competitive force equal to a man in a game like League of Legends, as the time of this recording and as we speak, is infinitesimal. Not because they are worse than men at games, because if all factors were considered equal, everything points to that not being the case, but because it is so massively hard to get across the start line. And even if you are in the race, you have to work so much harder and push aside every bias, every oppressive thought, every sucky thing that somebody tells you every single day about your career, about your person. And so eventually you're just like, screw it. Like I'll just go do something else, right? Like that's how difficult it is. And so is there a chance that a woman surpasses that, goes through everything, and leads to becoming a great player or force in this industry? Sure, and it's been done. You look at It's Hafu, who is a competitive Hearthstone player and can beat 99.9% of men at Hearthstone. She was at one time. Pokimane, who's a very high rank in Valorant, right? Like these people have, and Pokimane and Hafu are two examples of people who have broken the stereotype despite everything, and they've broken through at great difficulty to themselves, an unbelievable difficulty to themselves. Amaranth, who has worked 3 to 4 times harder, averaging 250 hours a month than any man in the streaming industry, is just like constantly working 7 days a week with no breaks to be the #1 female creator on Twitch, and speaks of this problem. So there are women that have broken through this. But what we need to do as a let's talk about what we need to do. So at the first thing I think we need to do is we're going to accept some premises. Okay, women are just as likely to thrive in an environment of competitive games or esports were the playing field equal, but it isn't. And the situation of women in esports is similar to early STEM problems. Women are not encouraged to be in esports and have few or no role models or support groups. So remember when we looked back at those previous studies that I showed you, that women that had more role models in textbooks were more likely to go into STEM fields, right? But there are no such role models in esports. Same thing. It's totally possible for a woman to be as good as a guy at video games. Why wouldn't it be? But the culture, pressure, and expectations, as well as harassment, makes this almost impossible. And lastly, let's talk about ESL. So I put my official position on the board. More women in esports is always good. This was the final conclusion that I reached when I was running esports teams. It was like, okay, no matter what these women rank, they show as role models to women who want to become competitive gamers. I cannot tell you. Every woman in the CSGO circuit will tell you that they, and hopefully some of you will comment and support me on this video. Hopefully you're listening. There were so many women who would message the competitive women and say, I never thought I had a shot at CSGO, and you inspired me to do this. You inspired me to be a streamer. How many people that Pokimane has gotten that said, you inspired me to be a streamer just because you're a woman that made it, right? Like these women that are currently in CSGO serve as role models to other women who previously didn't believe that it was possible because of the reasons that I've mentioned above. And that's an incredible thing. And that's why I think that the ESL League is a phenomenal idea. I don't care about like the competitive level or whatever or anything. Like, are women going to be competitive with men at that in that ESL League? Probably not right now. And for all the reasons we listed above. Now, is that going to inspire future role models? Is that going to normalize women in gaming? Is that going to introduce more women into gaming who wouldn't have otherwise been there before? Is that going to make it more acceptable and even the playing field just a little bit for women to be more accepted in gaming? It absolutely will. So nobody in their right mind should oppose the ESL League if you support real gender equality in gaming. Everything else is irrelevant. That's all we need to do. So if you're walking away from this video saying, well, what do I do with this information? The first thing you should do is you should not perpetuate the stereotype that women are worse in gaming for any other reason besides the fact that it is almost impossible for them to do it culturally. And the second thing you could do is just bring awareness around this subject. The more people that understand this and the more initiatives that we do for women, the more ways that we support them, the more we create social groups and support structures that support women in gaming and competitive, especially competitive gaming, the more you will see this, the more you will see them thrive, just like you did in STEM. And this is a problem, just like it is in STEM, that isn't solved yet, right? There's still a vast underrepresentation of women in science and math jobs. There's still going to be a vast underrepresentation of women in the gaming industry for years and years and years to come, regardless of the outcome of this video or the discussion of any other. That is just something that we need to work together as a society and as a culture within the gaming industry. We need to normalize the fact that it is difficult for women to do this. And then we need to build support structures that encourage women to play more games, to be a part of the competitive industry, and to compete. And we need to minimize and reduce and acknowledge the amount of harassment that happens, and as a culture get better about that. And as that hopefully recedes, we'll see women succeed more. And that'll be an awesome thing. So every single person that watches this video could be an individual part of making this happen. You really can. You would be surprised how much your voice matters and how much your voice includes this. Link this video to people if you think that it helped somebody or is a point of argument for in favor of women in the gaming industry, because it is going to be an extremely hard road. It is going to probably be decades until we get to the point where, if we get to the point that women are truly equal in competitive games. And that sucks to say, and it might not be what all of you want to hear, but it is the reality of our culture that moves very slowly. And you see these same issues in race. You see these same issues, unfortunately, in the entire world. It takes a long time for human beings to understand this. So hopefully this video is a small part of that step-by-step progress to get us to the point where women are better represented in gaming. And if you got anything out of this video, leave a comment. Or like or subscribe to the channel. I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much for supporting me, and most importantly, for supporting women in gaming, because that is something that has been near and dear to my heart for a long time. So thank you so much. See you again next time. Bye.